They wanted me to miss it. Not by much, just enough to say I was careless, just enough to whisper, "You know how she is." That's the thing about deadlines in corporate America. They're never just about time. They're about trust, perception, and who's allowed to be human. For women like me, being on time means being beyond reproach. The clock on my desk read 9:57 p.m. The second hand ticked loud enough to feel personal. The office was empty rows of desks, like a quiet graveyard of ambition. Monitors asleep under a cold fluorescent glow. The hum of the air vents was the only thing moving. I sat there, still, the light from my laptop cutting a pale reflection across my face. The blue-white glow made my skin look like armor. On my screen, 142 pages of analysis, every formula aligned, every reference cross-checked, every cell color-coded to perfection. 3 weeks of proof, 3 weeks of precision, 3 weeks of trying not to give them one more reason to say I was late. My email was open. Draft complete. Subject: Q4. Performance analysis final submission. The cursor blinked at the end of the last sentence like it was holding its breath. Deadline: 10 p.m. Time on my laptop: 9 hours, 57 minutes, and 24 seconds. I leaned back slightly, eyes half-lidded, letting the exhaustion roll through my shoulders. There's a calm that comes right before impact, the kind you learn when you've had to perform grace under suspicion your entire career. I knew how this story usually went. The same smirks in meetings, the same condescending reminders. If I submitted early, they'd say I was rushing. If I submitted late, they'd say I was unprofessional. Either way, they'd say something. That's why I stopped trying to prove and started preparing receipts. I checked the data links again. Internal server upload clean, backup copy saved to secure drive, timestamp feature verified, everything airtight. I took one slow breath and whispered to myself, "No noise, just numbers." The office lights dimmed automatically, motion sensors assuming everyone had gone home. The sudden darkness felt like an accusation. I waved a hand absently and the lights flickered back to life, half-hearted. Across the glass partition, I could still see the faint outlines of other desks, coffee cups, sticky notes, half-written goals. Everyone had gone home hours ago. That was fine. They'd see my name in the morning, on the project tracker, time-stamped and undeniable. The clock shifted to 9 hours, 58 minutes, and 1 second. The sound of the second hand felt heavier now, like the room was counting with me. I hovered over send, not because I doubted myself, because I wanted to feel the weight of this moment. This was the line between their story and mine. I thought of the looks that followed me in meetings when I spoke with certainty, the pause before someone rephrased my idea louder, the way silence became my only safe space. That's the thing about quiet power. It doesn't come from being unbothered. It comes from knowing exactly when to move. My phone buzzed with a Slack message from a teammate. "Still working? You're wild, girl. It's not that deep." I smiled slightly. It was that deep. Every line in that report was a defense built out of data. Every detail, a reminder that I earned my seat here. 9 hours, 58 minutes, and 10 seconds. I exhaled. Clicked send. The icon spun one full rotation. Then the soft ping echoed through the quiet. Received 21 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. That sound barely audible, almost tender, felt like vindication. No confetti, no applause. Just truth. Logged in binary. I sat back and watched the email fade into the sent folder. The cursor blinked again, calm now, like it knew something they didn't. Outside the window, the city lights blurred like slow-moving data streams. Somewhere, down on the street, a siren wailed and faded into distance. The office was still again. I rubbed my palms together, feeling the slight tremor of adrenaline ebbing out. Not fear, focus. The kind of focus that comes from carrying both excellence and expectation in the same body. People think confidence looks loud. Sometimes, it's just silence after doing everything right. I saved the file locally, closed every tab. The hum of the HVAC filled the air again, low and even, like a heartbeat sinking to peace. Before shutting my laptop, I whispered softly just to the room, just to myself. Now, let them try. One from my manager, one from the project lead. Subject line: report submission time. There it was, the crack forming, right where I knew it would. I sipped my coffee slowly before opening them. My reflection in the screen looked calm, too calm maybe. But that's the point. They read your face before they read your work. The message was polite, the kind that stings precisely because it pretends not to. Ariel, we noticed your report appears to have been received after the 10 p.m. cutoff. Please confirm your submission time. Appears. That word carried a smirk. Not was. Not is. Appears. Like they already believed it and just wanted to see how I'd react. I didn't type anything back. Not yet. Across the hall, I could see the team gathering in the conference room, paper cups, folders, tablets glowing under ceiling lights. The meeting would start in less than 5 minutes. I shut my laptop and stood. My heels made soft, deliberate sounds against the polished floor, rhythmic, steady, controlled. When I entered the room, the air shifted. Conversations paused, not stopped, just tilted. The same polite smiles surfaced, each one rehearsed and harmless on the surface. "Morning," I said evenly. "Morning," someone echoed, too quickly. I took my seat at the table, opened my folder, and looked straight ahead. The screen at the front of the room displayed the first slide. Q4. Performance analysis. Review. My own report. My own work. But I could already feel the weight of their narrative forming. The manager cleared his throat. "Before we dive in, we had a small issue with the submission timing last night." His voice was smooth, managerial, meant to sound neutral, but carrying the faint undertone of judgment. He turned to the data integrity officer. "I believe the system flagged it?" The woman beside him nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Yes. It came through a bit after 10, according to the dashboard log." "A bit. Corporate code for enough to make it your fault." I folded my hands neatly on the table. "Could you specify the exact timestamp?" I asked. My tone steady. Neutral. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then to me. "It says 10:02 p.m. 10:02. 2 minutes that could erase 3 weeks. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Inside, my mind was already processing, methodical, calm, technical. If they were reading the front-end dashboard, they were looking at the upload confirmation, not the server receipt. 2 different systems. 2 different clocks. I knew exactly where this was headed. My manager leaned forward slightly, folding his hands like a judge about to deliver empathy disguised as concern. "Ariel, you know how critical this deadline was. I'm sure it was an honest mistake, but we have to follow process." Honest mistake. That phrase always sounded like the beginning of an erasure. I watched the projector light flicker across his tie, the way he avoided direct eye contact when saying my name. He wasn't malicious, just comfortable in the small power of doubt. That's how microaggressions work. Soft, plausible, deniable. Someone across the table shifted in their chair. Someone else whispered about submission control. The noise was subtle but intentional, a hum of suspicion. I glanced around the table. Most faces avoided mine. One junior analyst, Jamal, met my eyes briefly. His look said, "I see what they're doing." Then he looked down again. Smart move. In this room, silence was safer than solidarity. The manager spoke again. "Unfortunately, a late submission disqualifies this report from the executive review." We'll need to reassign the presentation to another team member for next week. There it was, the sentence they'd been building toward. I didn't react. I just listened. My stillness was intentional, surgical. He waited, maybe expecting me to protest, to plead, to explain. When I didn't, his voice softened, condescending in its pity. Don't take it personally, Ariel. These things happen. I nodded once. Understood. Inside, I could feel the quiet fire humming low, steady. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. Because I knew something they didn't. Systems keep receipts. While they were rehearsing control, I was collecting evidence. The meeting continued. Voices moving around me like background static. Graphs, projections, percentages, all the language of performance. None of it touching truth. Every so often, I'd catch one of them glancing at me, the kind of glance that checked if the stereotype fit. Was she upset? Defensive? Silent? They don't understand that silence, when chosen, is power. I let them finish their small theater. By the end of the meeting, my report had been quietly transferred to another name, just for workflow continuity, they said. When the session adjourned, I gathered my notes calmly. No shaking hands, no forced smiles, just the faint sound of paper against wood. As I stood to leave, my manager said, "We appreciate your effort, Ariel. Really. But next time, just be mindful of submission timing." I met his gaze finally, eyes steady but soft enough to make him uncomfortable. "Timing," I said quietly. "Right." Then I walked out. Back at my desk, the noise of the office resumed, keyboards clacking, printers humming, small talk blooming again like nothing had happened. I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered above the trackpad. Then, slowly, I pulled up the server dashboard. Different system, different clock. The one that actually logs the receipt, not the upload confirmation. Rows of data scrolled past, line by line, until I found it clean, time-stamped, irrefutable, received, 21 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. I smiled. Just a small one. Because quiet power doesn't announce itself, it just waits for the perfect line of code to speak. The next 2 days felt like silence stretched too thin. Every greeting in the hallway came with a pause too long, every smile a little too practiced. I'd seen this play before, the performance of professionalism after a quiet takedown. People don't need to say it aloud. You can hear the shift in how they use your name. By Wednesday morning, my access to the project folder had quietly expired. The system note said, "File privileges revoked per workflow reallocation." Workflow. Corporate poetry for "we took your work, but please don't make a scene." I just sat there for a moment, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Then, I smiled, because it meant they'd already committed to the story. And when people commit to a lie, they stop checking the details. That's when you start to win. That afternoon, I requested a clarification meeting. No emotion in the subject line. Just 3 words. Submission timestamp review. The email went to my manager, the data officer, and the compliance lead, all CC'd. They accepted the invite within 5 minutes. Of course they did. They thought this would be the meeting where I apologized. At 3 p.m., I walked into conference room B, the smaller one, with glass walls that make everything feel more exposed than it should. 3 of them were already seated, laptops open, neutral expressions on standby. "Thanks for making time," I said, taking the seat directly across from my manager. He smiled like someone doing a kind thing. "Of course, Ariel. Let's just clear this up." "Exactly," I replied. "That's all I want." I connected my laptop to the display. The screen flickered to life. White background, black text, no colors, no presentation flair, just data. They didn't realize it yet, but the stage was already set. I understand the report was marked late based on the dashboard timestamp, I began, voice calm, measured. But I want to walk through the actual data flow. The compliance officer adjusted her glasses. That's unnecessary, Ariel. The dashboard reflects the system record. Correct, I said. It reflects one system record. The upload confirmation timestamp, not the server receipt. Her brows pinched slightly. My manager glanced between us. I'm sorry, he said. Could you clarify the difference? I clicked once. The slide changed. 2 columns appeared. Column A, dashboard log. Column B, server receipt log. I pointed. The dashboard timestamp captures the moment the file upload completed on the user side, but the server receipt records the time the system actually accepts and stores the file in our database. Silence. 3 pairs of eyes on me. I scroll down. Here is where it gets interesting. A magnified screenshot appeared. Black background. Green monospace text. The server log. Row highlighted in yellow. File. Q4. Report. Final. PDF user. A. Clark received. 21 hours, 58 minutes and 12 seconds. I looked up. That's 9:58 p.m. 2 minutes before the deadline. No one spoke. The hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Too loud now. My manager leaned closer to the screen, as if squinting might change the numbers. That can't be right, he said quietly. The dashboard pulls data every 5 minutes, I interrupted softly. I let the pause hang. Meaning, it registered my submission on the next sync cycle at 10:02. It wasn't anger in my voice. It was precision, surgical. Exact. I could feel their composure fraying in real time. The data officer typed something quickly on her laptop, checking. Her fingers hesitated, then stopped. She looked up, face pale. She's right. The receipt shows 9:58. A sharp silence followed, the kind that happens when truth slices too cleanly to argue with. My manager shifted in his chair. We, must have misinterpreted the log data. But that doesn't change. It changes everything, I said, gently but final. The decision to reassign my report was based on incorrect data, which means it was not compliant with protocol. He swallowed. We can fix this internally, Ariel. There's no need to escalate. Actually, I said, turning my laptop toward him, there already is a record of this escalation. On the screen, my email draft was open, the one addressed to the Compliance Oversight Committee. Subject line: Data misclassification affecting performance review. Timestamped 10 minutes earlier. Saved. Not yet sent. His face froze. He understood exactly what that meant. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. That would have given him something to read into. Instead, I leaned back. Tone calm. Professional. Unshakable. I wanted to give you the courtesy of transparency before it's logged formally. The data officer glanced at my manager, silent plea in her eyes. The compliance lead cleared her throat. Well, review the system policy and update your record immediately. Thank you, I said. I appreciate your integrity. It was the perfect choice of words, polite, heavy, impossible to argue with. When the meeting ended, they all filed out quickly. The choreography of quiet damage control. I stayed behind for a moment, letting the silence breathe. The glass wall reflected my outline steady, centered, unbothered. That reflection used to look nervous in these rooms. Not anymore. On the table, one of them had left a pen silver, engraved with the company logo. I picked it up, turned it once between my fingers, and placed it neatly beside the projector remote, every trace of the scene in perfect order. As I walked back to my desk, a few people looked up. Maybe they sensed something. Maybe they just knew when power had shifted hands. When I sat down, I finally opened that draft again, the one addressed to the committee. I read it one more time. Then I deleted it. Because the real victory wasn't in escalation. It was in documentation. I saved the server screenshot, the meeting summary, the confirmation log, all in a folder titled "For Audit Reference." Then I closed my laptop. My phone buzzed. A message from Jamal, just 3 words. "They know now." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence is louder than an announcement. Sometimes the evidence doesn't just clear your name, it rewrites the story itself. And this time, my story had a timestamp. Be honest. What would you do if it was you sitting in that room? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear you. When the meeting ended, I didn't leave right away. The others filed out quickly, one by one, performing their best version of composure. The quiet choreography of people realizing they've underestimated the wrong woman. I could feel the air still vibrating with the tension they left behind. I stayed seated for a moment, watching the soft blue glow of the projector fade from the wall. The faint hum of the HVAC filled the silence. My reflection stared back at me from the glass panel, the faint outline of a woman who didn't raise her voice, didn't argue, didn't need to. That was the lesson I'd learned long before this company. You can't out-yell power in a system built to mute you, but you can outlast it. You can out-document it. And when the data is clean, the silence becomes your loudest defense. I gathered my things slowly. Every motion, deliberate, laptop, charger, notes, the company pen someone had left behind. I placed the pen neatly on the table, almost like a closing signature to the scene. Then I walked back to my desk. No rush, no avoidance. Every step intentional, the kind of walk that says I belong here. Back at my station, my inbox was already blinking 5 unread emails, all with subject lines starting with clarification. I skimmed the first one. They were already rewriting the narrative. We want to ensure transparency regarding the timestamp discrepancy. There appears to have been a technical sync delay. We appreciate your attention to detail, Ariel. I almost laughed. Corporate apology language always sounds like it was written by someone allergic to accountability. They never say, "We were wrong." They say, "The system misinterpreted the data." And yet that's exactly the system I told them to question. I clicked reply all, fingers calm over the keyboard. Thank you for clarifying. For record accuracy, I've attached the original server receipt log and the corresponding dashboard sync data. Please let me know if compliance requires any additional metadata for audit alignment. Every sentence was measured. Every word sharp enough to cut, but not draw blood. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about record. That's how you fight when you work twice as hard to be believed once. I took a deep breath and leaned back. The soft jazz playing from my earbuds, a Coltrane instrumental, drowned out the murmur of keyboards and coffee machines. In that rhythm, I found my center again. When I was growing up, my grandmother used to say, "You ain't gotta tell folks you know what you're doing. Just do it well enough they gotta notice." I didn't understand that fully until I started working in spaces where being unnoticed was safer than being right. But that day, I understood exactly what she meant. Quiet excellence wasn't about shrinking. It was about precision so sharp it couldn't be ignored. Around 4:15 p.m., my manager pinged me on Teams. "Hey Ariel, got a minute to talk?" I smiled. "Sure. Your office or mine?" He typed back, "Here is fine." Of course it was. Text meant no witnesses. Just wanted to say nice catch on that timestamp thing. Saved us some embarrassment. Us. They always say us when they mean them. "Happy to help," I typed. "Accuracy helps everyone." He reacted with a thumbs up emoji. I could almost hear the awkward exhale through the screen. That was the thing about power. Once you make someone confront their own systems, they don't know where to stand anymore. By the time the office started emptying out, the golden hour light was stretching long shadows across the cubicles. I closed my laptop and let my eyes rest for a second. The day wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about resetting a pattern, because I knew this wasn't the first time someone had been labeled late or careless when the data said otherwise. It was just the first time someone had proof clean enough to make them look in the mirror, and I wanted that mirror to stay up. So I walked over to the compliance officer's office, the one with glass panels and too many succulents. She looked surprised when I knocked. "Ariel." "Hi," she said, straightening papers. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," I replied, smiling faintly. "I just wanted to offer a suggestion. About the timestamp policy." Her eyebrows rose. "Oh? I think it would help if we synced the dashboard logs and server receipts every minute instead of every 5. That would prevent discrepancies for anyone." She hesitated. "That's actually a good idea. I'll draft a short memo," I said. "No rush." As I turned to leave, she said softly, "Thank you, Ariel. Not for catching the error, but for how I handled it." That meant more than she realized. On the elevator ride down to the lobby, I watched my reflection in the metal doors, steady, composed. There was something sacred about not letting anger use your name louder than your work did. When the doors opened, a few coworkers were waiting. One of them, Jamal, from IT, gave me a knowing look. No words, just that subtle nod that says, "I saw what you did, sis." I nodded back. Small, silent. That's how recognition moves through our spaces. Quiet, coded, powerful. Outside, the sky had turned the color of wet slate. I pulled my coat tighter, feeling the weight of the day ease from my shoulders. I walked past the glass facade of the building, each window reflecting pieces of me. The calm, the precision, the woman who didn't flinch when they tried to write her out of her own success story. That night, at home, I opened my laptop again, not for work this time, for clarity. I pulled up the folder, ED labeled, for audit reference. Inside, screenshot of the server receipt, 21 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. Meeting notes, with timestamp of the compliance review. Email chain confirming correction of records. Evidence of truth. Proof of integrity. But beyond that, it was a map of how to survive the microaggressions they never put in the policy handbook. I added one last document, a personal note titled, "When They Question Your Time." It wasn't for anyone else. Just a reminder to myself and maybe, one day, another woman who needed it. They will question your timing, your tone, your talent. Don't match their noise, master their system. Let the receipts speak. I sat there for a while, thinking about every woman I'd seen get labeled too slow, too emotional, too reactive, when all she was doing was protecting her peace in a space that confused calm for compliance. I thought about my grandmother again, how she used to hum gospel while ironing her uniform before long shifts. How she'd say, "Baby, you don't win by shouting in their storm. You win by bringing your own weather." That's what strategy was. Bringing your own weather. And tonight, the forecast was mine. The next morning, the internal announcement went out. Due to a system log discrepancy, project documentation will be reviewed for timestamp accuracy. Thanks to Ariel Thompson for identifying the issue. It was just a few lines, sterile, factual. But to me, it sounded like thunder, because the system had said my name, not as a target, but as a reference point for precision. That was the real strategy all along. You don't have to destroy the system to win. You just have to make it correct itself because of you. And as I sat there, sipping my coffee, watching that message ripple across inboxes, I thought about how small moments rewrite entire cultures. How one line of code, one timestamp, one quiet woman refusing to shrink can shift the story from "she was late" to "she was right." That's not just strategy, that's legacy. Thursday mornings always carried a strange kind of quiet in our office, the kind that hums before something breaks. I walked in at 8:45, coffee in hand, the taste of roasted beans and small victories lingering on my tongue. The open floor plan felt like a stage before curtain call, everyone performing normalcy while waiting for the plot to unfold. They'd seen the internal memo by now. My name in it. The words identified the issue. They didn't know how to act around me, whether to congratulate or avoid me. That uncertainty was power, and I wore it like perfume. Subtle, undeniable. I didn't need to say a word. Around 10, a meeting invite appeared in my inbox. Project status. Immediate review. Organizer. Derek Walters. Attendees. Project team plus compliance officer. I could almost predict the choreography, the controlled panic of management trying to clarify optics. They weren't ready to apologize. Not yet. But they were ready to contain me. Fine. Let them try. When I walked into the conference room, the lights were too bright, that kind of white office light that erases warmth from everyone's skin tone. The long glass table reflected my face, the small curls near my temple catching the light like sparks. Across from me sat Derek, my manager, posture stiff, jaw tight. To his right, the same compliance officer from before. Two analysts sat at the end of the table, whispering until they realized I'd entered. Then silence. I placed my laptop down gently, opened it, and looked up. "Morning," I said. Calm. "Morning, Ariel," Derek replied, voice too casual to be natural. He cleared his throat. "So, I wanted to address the recent confusion around the report submission. I think it's important that we all, realign expectations and move forward constructively." Realign expectations. Corporate dialect for pretend it didn't happen. I nodded once. Of course. He started a slideshow, the kind filled with bullet points and vague terms like efficiency improvement and workflow accountability. I let him talk. Sometimes, silence is the most expensive seat at the table. As he droned on, I watched him avoid my eyes, scanning everyone else, gesturing toward data he hadn't verified, wrapping words around guilt like ribbon around a bruise. But then, on slide 5, there it was. A single line of text in the next steps column. Review submission protocol to avoid future delays. Future. Delays. The word hit like static. I felt it in my spine, that coded implication that somehow this was still my fault. I straightened in my chair. Slow. Deliberate. The air shifted. "Derek," I said softly. "May I clarify something?" He looked relieved, mistaking my tone for compliance. "Of course." I turned my laptop toward the screen, connecting to the projector again. The same log file appeared, the one that had already silenced a room once. But this time, I zoomed out. Not just one line. The full data trail. Every file. Every user. Every timestamp for that project. The green text glowed faintly against the black like quiet truth written in code. I stood up. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't rise. "I think we should all see what really happened, not just the part that fits someone's comfort zone." Camera angle. Wide shot. Ariel standing. The room frozen. The hum of the projector. A single bead of light gliding over her cheekbone as she looks toward Derek. "Here," I continued. "You can see my upload entry. 21 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. Confirmed. 2 minutes early." I clicked down. And here, the next upload batch starts at 22:02. That's the dashboard sync. Which means every timestamp after mine reflects post-deadline entries from the system itself. I looked directly at him now. "So, if the dashboard shows 10:02, that's because your system updated at 10:02, not because my work was late." No one breathed. I let the silence stretch, not cruelly, but deliberately. Sometimes truth needs space to echo. Then I leaned slightly forward, my tone still calm but edged with something sharper. Next time you question my work, I said, question your system first. The sentence landed like glass, breaking underwater, no sound, just pressure. It rippled through the room in slow motion. The analysts exchanged glances, unsure whether to look impressed or alarmed. The compliance officer's lips parted slightly, the faintest gasp of recognition. Derek's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to the data, then to me. For a second, his mask slipped. I saw it. The flicker of realization that the hierarchy head leaned on no longer shielded him from accountability. Camera close-up. Ariel's eyes. Steady, quiet, unflinching. Light shifts from cool to warm, like a tone correction for truth. He tried to recover. That's not what I meant, Ariel. I was referring to optics, I offered gently. Or to accountability? His mouth opened, then closed. He knew any answer would trap him further. So I smiled. Just a little. It's okay, Derek. Systems fail. People learn. Then I sat down. Calm. Finished. The meeting continued for a few more minutes. Mostly filler words, nervous laughter, rapid typing. But the energy had shifted completely. I wasn't defending myself anymore. They were defending their process. That's the reversal. Not rage, not revenge, just precision, letting the narrative turn itself inside out. When the meeting ended, people left in silence. But it was different this time. Not avoidance, respect. I lingered, gathering my things slowly. The compliance officer approached quietly. Ariel, can I quote that line about questioning the system first? I chuckled softly. If it helps fix the process, sure. She smiled, genuine this time. It'll do more than that. Walking past the glass wall, my reflection caught my eye. This time, the woman staring back wasn't defending her place, she was defining it. A few co-workers exchanged soft nods, subtle acknowledgments of the shift. Somewhere inside, peace settled. Not triumph. Not pride, the kind that comes when you realize truth alone can rearrange the room. Later, Jamal messaged. That line? Already on Slack. People quoting you. I smiled quietly. Next time you question my work, question your system first. It was circulating like folklore, not a threat, but proof that clarity can be power. By day's end, the all-staff email arrived. As part of our commitment to data transparency, enhanced log synchronization will be implemented across all reporting systems. Thanks to Ariel Thompson for identifying this improvement. I read it twice, not for validation, but to feel the weight of a single act of truth reshaping an entire system. No applause could measure this victory. This was structural correction. The office lights dimmed. City glow reflected off the glass windows. I took a last look around the place where one accusation once tried to erase me. Now, the system carried my imprint. The reversal was complete. I didn't need revenge. I had proof. Friday morning arrived soft, gray over the city skyline. I walked in early, heels echoing in the empty lobby, calm while others scrambled. Past the glass walls of Conference Room B, traces of yesterday's chaos lingered. Derek's laptop reflected the fluorescent lights. He was already reviewing the logs, cross-referencing every timestamp. The office moved differently, slower, more careful, as if the system itself had learned to respect accuracy. By 9 a.m., an all-hands email appeared in my inbox. I opened it slowly, as if reading poetry rather than corporate memos. Subject: correction to project submission records from Compliance Office to all staff. Due to a timestamp discrepancy identified by Ariel Thompson, project submissions for Q4 reports have been reviewed and corrected in accordance with system logs. Thank you to Ariel for her diligence and precision. I read it again. Then I read it a third time, savoring the understated power of recognition that had nothing to do with theatrics. They couldn't deny the evidence. They couldn't rewrite the logs. They couldn't erase what was recorded. Later that morning, I was called into Derek's office. He looked less confident than usual, the kind of posture that shrinks a man who thought authority alone was enough. Ariel, he began, clearing his throat. I want to formally acknowledge the correction you identified. The executive team has reviewed the server logs, and your submission has been reinstated in the Q4 presentation list. I nodded, calm. No need for theatrics, Derek. Just documenting the truth was enough. He shifted in his chair. Of course, but I also want to acknowledge your integrity in handling this. You didn't escalate unnecessarily. You didn't raise your voice. You presented the facts and let the system speak. I leaned back slightly, eyes steady. Sometimes that's all it takes. Systems follow facts. People follow integrity. There was a pause. He nodded slowly. Absolutely. And the team recognizes that. Walking back to my desk, I noticed subtle changes already unfolding. The junior analysts who had been hesitant to speak around me now offered small nods of acknowledgement. Jamal from IT whispered, "Nicely done, Ariel," as he passed my cubicle. Even the compliance officer smiled knowingly from her corner, that quiet smile that says, "You just showed us all how it's done." There's something about justice that doesn't shout. It hums. It radiates in the way people adjust their behavior, the way small courtesies appear naturally instead of being forced. At 11 a.m., the project team convened for a final Q4 review. The tension that had once hovered over the room like a cloud was gone, replaced by an undercurrent of respect. Everyone spoke more deliberately, more carefully, choosing words that matched their intent. I presented my portion of the report, not loudly, not to draw attention. I let the data speak, and the data did. Percentages, trends, projections, all clear, all precise, all correct. After the meeting, Derek pulled me aside in the hallway. "I want to make sure your contribution is properly noted in the executive summary," he said, his tone hesitant, almost reverent. I smiled faintly. "It already will be. The logs, the emails, everything is documented." He exhaled, a long, quiet sigh. "Good. Well deserved." I nodded once, because that's what this moment was about. Deservedness. Not drama, not revenge, not spectacle, just integrity recognized. As the day wore on, I observed micro-shifts in corporate behavior. A team member who had been quick to question my competence approached me, hesitating slightly. "Thanks for clarifying the logs. I see now how I misread the data." I nodded. Glad it helped. Accuracy matters more than assumptions. It's remarkable how much respect can ripple through a space when someone chooses facts over frustration. Later, at lunch, I sat with Jamal and two other colleagues in the cafeteria. The conversation was light, casual, but there was an undercurrent of acknowledgement. People asked my opinion on unrelated processes. They asked for guidance. That's the real justice. Influence shifts quietly when credibility is undeniable. By late afternoon, I had one final task: updating my 4-audit reference folder. Screenshots, logs, emails, timestamps, everything meticulously cataloged. I added a brief note. Documentation is the clearest form of defense. Integrity is the loudest form of power. Saving it felt like closing a chapter. Not because the battle was over, the systems would continue to challenge, the biases would continue to whisper, but because this time the truth had been recorded, acknowledged, and integrated into the workflow itself. That evening, Derek sent me a Teams message. "Ariel, your professionalism and precision have set a new standard for the team. Thank you. I didn't reply immediately. I closed my laptop, stretched my shoulders, and took a deep breath. Sometimes the quietest acknowledgement is the most powerful. I thought about all the Black women in corporate spaces who had been misjudged, underestimated, or labeled unfairly. This wasn't just my victory. It was a demonstration of what grounded preparation, emotional intelligence, and technical mastery could achieve. Before leaving the building, I paused in the lobby, looking up at the high glass windows that reflected the evening sky. I thought about legacy. Not the flashy kind, not the viral moment. The kind that builds silently, step by step, timestamp by timestamp, action by action. That's how you ensure fairness persists in systems that are too often skewed against you. That's how you win without spectacle. And for every woman who has been told she's late, careless, or too emotional, you don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to play their game. You just need to be meticulous, grounded, and unshakable. And when the system finally reflects the truth, not theirs, not yours, but the real, that's justice. By the time I walked out into the city streets, the sky was bruised with twilight. Lights reflected off wet pavement, each one a tiny, glimmering affirmation that the day had ended fairly. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned, strong, quietly, undeniably just, because the logs, the emails, and my careful integrity weren't just correcting one incident. They were setting a precedent, a reminder to everyone in that building, especially the women watching quietly from their desks, that precision, preparation, and quiet strength can rewrite the narrative. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't just my justice. It was systemic correction delivered softly, firmly, and irrevocably. The office was quiet that Friday evening, but it wasn't empty. It was the calm after clarity, a space shaped by truth and integrity. I thought about every time I had been labeled late, emotional, or careless. Each stereotype a shadow cast over my work. But this week, facts spoke louder than assumptions. Every timestamp, every log, every carefully documented detail became my voice. Smart revenge isn't drama or rage. It's preparation, precision, and quiet intelligence. It's letting the system, the evidence, and your integrity do the work for you. When the room bends around truth, culture shifts subtly, powerfully. For every woman underestimated, especially Black women navigating corporate spaces, document, communicate calmly, understand the system. Let your work speak. Questioning me won't change my work, but questioning your system just might change your outcomes. That's how quiet confidence becomes legacy. That's how integrity transforms bias into empowerment. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us who we are. For every Black woman told to stay quiet, speak anyway.